Through the Earth's ecosystem is where the energy flows directionally, entering in the form of sunlight and exiting in the form of heat. However, the chemical compounds that make up the living organisms are different as they are being recycled to the biosphere for a very long time. As the term of biogeochemical relates to the considerations of biological, geological, and chemical aspects in this cycle, the word of biogeochemical cycle is a natural pathway in which the essential elements of a molecule or a chemical element such as water moves between non-living or abiotic forms and living or biotic forms. Chemical elements and water are constantly recycled in the ecosystem through biogeochemical cycles. During the water cycle, water enters the atmosphere by evaporations and transpirations, and water returns to land by precipitations that will be further discussed. Ecosystem relies on these biogeochemical cycles, where many of the nutrients that living things depends on, such as carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus, are in constant circulations. Essential elements were often stored in reservoirs. When the essential elements can be sequestered for long periods of time, humans can affect these cycles where they extract carbon and nitrogen from the geosphere and use them for energy and fertilizer. This has increased the amount of these elements in circulation, which has detrimental effects on ecosystems.
When it comes to the ecosystem, the biochemical cycle is a part of our way of life, since it's a pathway which consists of living matter which circulates around us. The term biochemical, it means to compress the knowledge of biological, geological, not to mention its chemical aspects of the cycles we learned so far. And these cycles which what we call gaseous cycles, which consist of four cycles, and they are nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and lastly, water cycles. Going with the term reservoir, this consists of two things, and they are air and ocean, which in simple terms, evaporation, sedimentation, or rather sedimentary. In short, it comes from the Earth's crust, which is for reservoir.
In an article about the water cycle, it says that humans alter it by constructing dams and through water withdrawals. Climate change is expected to additionally affect water supply and demand. In addition to this are other activities, such as irrigation and deforestation. Irrigation speaks of the anthropogenic effect that as human population increases, so is demand for land, food, and ultimately water. It is a vital activity for lands that are dry or simply do not get enough watering from rainfall. Now, of course, this has its disadvantages. One of it being that it removes water from its natural source that would eventually produce leaching and runoff. Nutrients also disappear through this human activity. In the case of deforestation, it affects the water cycle in both a local and global scale, with trees being an essential part for the local humidity and its support on soil ability on multiple things such as absorb and retain water, produce nutrients for plants, and moderate soil temperatures. It ultimately helps the environment and the lives of the people. In which case, the Le Chatelier's principle applies in these human activities. With the disturbance in the equilibrium by changing the conditions, there is a counteraction to re-establish an equilibrium.
So what is invasive species? Invasive species is a non-native creature that causes ecological or economic damage in a new habitat. Invasive species can impair both natural resources and human usage of those resources in an environment, capable of causing the extinction of local plants and animals, diminishing biodiversity, competing for limited resources with non-native creatures, and changing environments. The invasive species can harm human health by introducing new diseases, acting as a vector for existing diseases, or inflicting wounds through bite, stings, allergies, or other poisons. The most invasive mosquito in the world acts as a vector for a variety of illnesses, including West Nile virus, and the most common mosquito in the world is the dengue fever. How about the direct and indirect effects of invasive species? Experiments. have demonstrated that diverse groups outperform less diverse population in terms of ecological functioning, implying that loss of biodiversity will diminish functionality. Invasive species are significant contributors to global change, and various studies have shown that they have an impact on biodiversity and ecological functioning. Invaders can change ecosystem functioning directly by modifying disturbance regimes on nutrient levels. Only if intruders considerably reduce biodiversity and impair functionality will indirect implications of biodiversity loss be noticeable.
So what is the meaning of epigenetics? So epigenetics is the study of how cells control gene activity without changing the DNA sequence. So what are epigenetics in marine life? So I wanted to set an example in the marine life. And the researchers raised a sample of sulfidic and non-sulfidic fish in freshwater environments. When the fish produced two operations of offspring, they measured their epigenetic similarities, specifically regions of DNA methylation, a type of chemical modification that can regulate gene expression, turning a gene on or off. So they found that the grand offspring of the sulfidic fish had a 80% overlap in DNA methylation regions that with the grandparent fish, even though they had been raised in freshwater. This compares to only 20% overlap with the non-sulfidic fish that had always lived in freshwater. Toxins coming from the land going straight to our atmosphere is condensed into liquid. So examples of this are the land pollution. So like the carbon gas emitted from cars or from air cons, such things like that. So those type of chemicals are going straight to our atmosphere. Hence, this is condensed. This is actually mixed with the water vapor above. So now it turns into rain. This is how the water cycle works. So now once it is in the rain, it is now going down back into our seas and affecting our marine life. So this may affect us actually because of the seafoods that we are consuming. So how does epigenetics in water affect us? These are actually some of the effects of epigenetics. So the first one is infections. Germs can change your epigenetics to weaken your immune system. This helps the germ survive. This could also pass down to us because of the germs or the toxins from the food that we eat. So next is cancer. Certain mutations make you more likely to develop cancer. Likewise, some epigenetic changes increase your cancer risk. And lastly is nutrition during pregnancy. A pregnant woman's environment and behavior during pregnancy, such as whether she eats healthy food, can change the baby's epigenetics. Like how the grandparent fish are in toxins water, this is now passed on to their offspring. So some of these changes can remain for decades and might make the child more likely to get certain diseases.